What's up, Net Soldiers? I'm the Alliance, and welcome back to the video, guys. Today I'm going to be doing a brief little synopsis slash breakdown on the most recent episode of the Star Wars: The Clone Wars Season 7, Episode 3. Now, for me, I'm going to kind of go into my thoughts on this episode because they are different from the last two episodes, and I'll get to that. But for right now, let me just kind of explain like what happens and if I thought it was cool, what I thought it was not cool, whatever, that type of stuff. So, first off, the episode begins right where the last one left off, where they find Echo, and Echo, they have to like detach him and get going, and then the droids are chasing them. I think from that point, I think it's pretty cool. I like the fact that they didn't kill off Wrecker. I thought that Wrecker was definitely going to die that one moment. I'm like, oh no, here it comes, because there's different like themes you see in Clone Wars arcs. It's like if you have this character show up, and then all of a sudden he sacrificed himself for the greater good. And it's cool to have characters sacrifice themselves because that's like the best way to send characters off, especially cool ones. I was like, no, like there's just, don't do it again. Like don't do the usual, thing that the Clone Wars usually does. But they didn't, so I was actually pleasantly surprised. That was a nice little subversion of my expectations. Okay, I'm back. You might notice they look a little different. I actually had to turn off the one light. It was like, started strobing, and I didn't want that to be distracting, so there you go. So anyways, after Anakin and his clone troops, they all kind of escape the facility. Well, they escape the one facility, and then they're going across this little bridge thing. I would say it's more like a pipeline. They go across the pipeline, they get ambushed, and they have to use this, I guess you could call it like a mating call for like other animals, these flying animals to come in, and they can jump on them and fly away. And that, of course, goes off without a hitch. And then they eventually get back to the village that we saw in the first episode. And, oh no, was that the second? It was the first. And I think we did see them in both episodes. Whatever the case, we go back to the village, they meet up with them, and they're like, hey, the Separatists are coming. So then the Separatists, of course, come to the village, and the villagers have to team up with the Jedi to take them down. I feel like that is a character arc. I shouldn't say character arc, but that is like a story thread that I've seen so many times in the Clone Wars, is like the idea of, oh, the Republic is doing something, they're on a mission, oh no, they got the attention of the Separatists, now the Separatists are coming after the Republic, and now the Republic has to team up with the natives to take down the Separatists. I feel like that happens in at least like 3 times every season, because that is usually like what you'd see, especially if it does a good callback to like, Episode 6, when the Rebels team up with Ewoks to take down the Empire. And that's something that I think that Star Wars always kind of hangs on to. Like, even if you are down in the dumps and you have no way of winning, the idea is you have to keep on fighting, because at the end of the day, that is what hope is. Hope is to have the ability to continue fighting even when you are completely beaten, or even when you're completely outnumbered. So I think that's pretty cool. So I mentioned this in my previous episode, but why do they feel the need in this series to really just kind of depower Anakin? I get the idea of having to introduce the conflict, so when you introduce a character who's as powerful as Anakin, you have to kind of decrease him in some type of way. But when I was watching this entire scene, in the back of my head, while they're like fighting this big, tower droid, I'm thinking to myself like, Anakin could just take out both these droids like nothing if he really wanted to. And it's like, I guess they had to kind of pull him away so he could help Echo, like, up on the cliff. That's okay, I guess. But it did kind of take me out of the episode a little bit. So I don't exactly know if maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm wrong for thinking that way. But it is kind of weird when you have a character as powerful as Anakin, and you're constantly just trying to handicap him just so you can't just end conflicts like that. Especially when you establish the character, especially like in a couple seasons in the past, that he can pretty much do anything he wants with the Force. He could probably crush both of those droids by himself in a matter of seconds, but they have to depower him a little bit because that wouldn't be easy. That'd be too easy. I get that. But there are a couple moments in this episode where I was just like, come on, Anakin. Come on, man. Like you could solve this in a matter of seconds. So, like I said, maybe that's just something that like I prefer. Maybe that's completely me, and maybe you might think I'm wrong. But it does kind of take me out of the episode when I see stuff like that. The Separatists get beaten, they leave, and the Republic all are happy, and they all leave with Echo along with them. Now at the very end, there's kind of like the signal where Echo's like, everything's back to normal, good, and it's almost like they're calling out that everything isn't actually back to normal. Like maybe Echo actually has some type of separatist implantment in his head now, so now he can use him as a spy. I don't know. It almost seems like that is going to happen. I don't know if this is just like part 3 of the whole arc of the story. I think this is part 3. I think we're going to get another part where Wat Tambor is going to be chasing after them and get Echo back, or even Echo's going to die or something along those lines. I don't exactly know how that's going to go down. I feel like the next episode would be a good episode for Rex to discover his inhibitor chip and not exactly what will happen with it, but just kind of turn it off just to kind of not want people to know everything about him. I don't know. So that one's a tough one because there's not many more episodes left in this arc. I guess you could say there's only one, or this might have been the last one. And I don't know. I'll explain that now that I got that part of the way. So the reason why I'm so conflicted over this episode is because I don't like it as much as I like the last two. I think the first episode of this season did a really good job of reestablishing us into the universe. The second one did a really good job of continuing that establishment. And then the third one, it feels like filler to me. You know, and I talk about filler in the past. People have called me out as being a prequel apologist because I just have things that I like about the prequels. You know what I mean? They've also called me a prequel apologist because I've attacked... I attack the original trilogy, but I don't attack the original trilogy. I just think that if you're going to call out the prequel trilogy for whatever reasons, then you have to expect that I'm going to then call out some of the original trilogy stuff, because not everything is perfect in those films, including Empire. If you guys want to see that video, check my link in the description below. It's a pretty good video, I'd say. I think it's a good video, so you might want to see that if you want to hear my opinions on that. But the idea is a lot of stuff that happens in this episode I feel like didn't necessarily need to exist. And what I mean by this is when they capture Echo, it's pretty much just the escape from the facility to get Echo out of there. But ultimately there's no real story arc points. There's no points with characters that we need to see. There's no point when like a character has some type of thing he needs to do and he doesn't know if he can make the sacrifice. There's just no real theme going on with any of the characters. They're just kind of just escaping to add an extra episode to this arc. Now here we go. Like I said earlier, that could just be my opinion, and I could be wrong, but it does kind of feel that way. It feels like this episode was kind of put together because they didn't want to do a two episode arc. So they're going to have a 3 episode, or they did this episode just to kind of branch the arc into another episode 4. Because all they could have done was, in the beginning of this episode, they like when they were doing when the announcer in the beginning, or the narrator, he's like, Echo has been found by his friends, haha, you know, like when they do that type of thing. Rex found Echo, haha. What they could have did was like, then they escaped the facility, and now this is where they would try to be escaping like through space, and that's when maybe Echo gets killed or something along those lines in the next episode. So this episode feels like a bridge episode. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are some cool moments in it. Like, I liked when they were surrounded on the little pipeline. I thought it was cool when Anakin actually started doing something in the final battle. I thought that there was some interesting tricks they did for the narrative. It's just the narrative itself didn't feel like it was deserving of its own story. Like I said, I keep saying, might just be me, but I want to let you guys know that that's how I feel. I want to hear what you guys think in the comments below about that. So, with that said, let us predict the future. I still think that Echo having that stuff on his head is still going to somehow link up to Rex's inhibitor chip, and that's how he's going to kind of get it like deactivated. We know that Rex gets his deactivated. We know that Gregor gets his deactivated, and we know that Wolf gets his deactivated, but we don't exactly know how they get them. So, I'm wondering if Rex is going to discover something in Echo's mind, or Echo maybe has discovered that something's going on. Of course, he's not going to necessarily tell Rex about the whole Order 66 plot, but he is going to tell him, like, hey, pretty much you become mind-controlled if they want you to. And Rex is like, yeah, I'm just going to get that taken out. You know, just like Anakin. I've learned a lot from Anakin, and Anakin would have got that taken out too, so I'm just going to take it out. So I think they're going to probably go along those lines, or Echo is going to die, sacrificing himself to let Rex know, like, hey, they can control you through that inhibitor chip, so take it out. And then Rex is like, well, I might as well. And then, you know, maybe Gregor and Wolf are over. They're all just kind of hanging out, maybe drinking a few beers. And Rex is like, Boris, you should get that inhibitor chip out. I'll get it myself. Pulls out his pliers and just starts yanking. He yanks Gregor's out, he yanks Wolf's out. And then Cody's like, no, man, I'm not doing that. I don't know what you guys are talking about. I'm not getting mind controlled. And then, like, a year later, he's like shooting at Obi-Wan. Now, of course, that would be funny to see, but that wouldn't make any sense. But hey, anything could happen. So there you go, guys. That has been my review for Star Wars The Clone Wars Season 7, Episode 3. Episode 4 is coming up. I don't know if it is going to be the start of a new arc or if it's going to be kind of the finishing of this specific arc. I think it's time to kind of move on. Like I mentioned, I don't necessarily think that this Episode 3 deserved to exist. I liked it. It had some cool parts in it. But if we're talking from a narrative standpoint, it didn't really have any extra things it needed to throw in there. It didn't solve any character arcs. It didn't advance any characters, like, as personality-wise. It didn't really make anyone better from this episode. Everyone just kind of got out alive. I guess if you could say the reason for this episode is pretty much just to give Echo a reason to get off the planet. But in the end of the day, they could have just kind of skipped over that anyways. So I don't know. Maybe that's just my opinion, but that's how I feel. So once again, guys, let me know how you felt about this episode. What do you think is going to happen next? I'm really excited to see how they're going to handle the jump in time after or right before Order 66. I really like to see how that kind of works out. So yeah, let me know in the comments below. Please remember to like, subscribe, and notifications for more videos. And until next time, guys, I'll catch you later. Peace.